Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Another bizarre week in rugby really, if you're a New Zealand fan. With everything that's been said over the last little while, there's a whole new depth that's been plumbed with another unwanted first under Ian Foster the week that he was given his job back all the way through to the World Cup. So we're going to talk a lot about that, and we mean no disrespect to Argentina when we talk a lot about that. Your performance was immense and should be highly respected, but the world's greatest rugby team is hitting some incredible lows, and we really need to get down on what's going on here. James Parsons in Auckland, Bryn over in Japan. Thanks once again, guys, for joining us. You ready?
Don't know if I am.
I hope you are. Let's start off with the All Blacks losing 18-25 in Christchurch against Argentina. The first time ever losing at home. 6 losses from 8 games now. An unprecedented third straight loss in New Zealand, which is probably the most scary of all of the things that have been said so far. And afterwards, Ian Foster asks for patience. He asks for patience. Now, in my book, patience is something that is one earned and generally comes from someone having trust in you or loves you because you're family. That's where it comes from. Neither of those two things, probably as far as New Zealand fans are concerned, have been done. There's no reason to trust. 6 losses in 8 games. Love, there wasn't any there from the start. So, with all of that said...
you haven't missed in this opening.
Patience, is it something that this team deserves?
Oh, I don't think the All Blacks is a jersey that, you know, we're used to or accustomed to applying patience. And I don't think we want to go down that line, personally. We expect excellence, and as we've said in previous weeks, when we've had losses, I feel that's our point of difference and that's our strength, and we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that edge. Obviously, we've said we don't want to go in too far in terms of abuse, but that edge and the care and the desire for us to be great, but yeah, I hope it remains. Because the worst case would be, okay, if we focus on patience and then we switch off from our game. And have that love affair with the All Blacks and the legacy that has been set over 130 plus years.
Yeah, Bryn, what is patience in this scenario? How long should you be patient with a team which has a World Cup 12 months away?
Well, unfortunately, I think, like Jip said, I think we're so accustomed to seeing excellence and being dominant and being world leading and when it comes to rugby. But just unfortunately, at this time and where we are in our journey, we're not the best team in the world, and you'd arguably say we're not even in the top 2 teams in the world. We're probably within that kind of range around. There's probably 6 teams in the world, and probably put Argentina in that category now, where on your day, any of those teams can win. And so, I think it's probably just a changing of an understanding for the New Zealand public, and even us as for me, being alive for how long I've been alive, we've always been around the All Blacks, been dominant. We're always winning. We're always winning championships, especially the Tri-Nations or back in the day. But at this stage, with where we are in the journey, with where this All Blacks team is now, that's not us. We're not the best team in the world. So you've got to change your mindset around what that's looking like for us. But I think the expectation for us is still, as the players in the team and the coaches and even the fans in New Zealand, is we don't want to be like that. We want to continue to win. We want to be where we need to be. But at this stage, we're just not there. We're not the best team in the world. We're far from there, actually, to be honest. And we're just lacking in inconsistency. So a good thing that Jason Ryan actually brought up on the breakdown, they asked him around, what do you think is leading to this inconsistency? And one of the things that really shot out to me was preparation and questioning the preparation around what that week must have looked like or might have looked like. Now, we don't know. We're not privy to know if the preparation was right. But I guess when your coach is coming out and saying, to get consistent performances, his biggest thing was around getting the preparation right. So that might be one of the areas that they're not getting right, and something they might need to look forward around going bone deep consistently around that preparation, no matter what team they're playing. Because, look, no disrespect to Argentina, but you think in the past, maybe 5-6 years ago, we would have found a way to win that test match. And, whereas at this moment and at this time, with how we are, we're just not winning test matches consistently anymore.
And I think the key bit as well, I agree with preparation, that sets you up to give yourself the best chance to perform. But that first 30 minutes, I was sitting there going, man, their breakdown, their attack, their ability to punch onto the ball was looking really sharp. And they looked, they definitely turned up for that fast start. We've seen them start slow and then not be able to catch up and probably finish strong, whereas the opposite, I thought that first 30 minutes they were pretty brutal around that clean out. There was quick fast ball, they were finding space on the edges, but it just sort of faded away towards that half-time break, and a lot of it was due to the things that they could control, and that's that offside line predominantly, and their work around the breakdown. And when you've got a kicker like Boffelli, we've seen him do it against Scotland, and he's obviously done it against Australia. He can just kick them from anywhere. And I think that's the hardest thing when you're a player, and I speak from experience of, when you do get in a run of losses, you almost over-try, and because you're over-trying, you're a little bit off in terms of what you'd normally trust. Whereas they tackled at 92%. They didn't need to push the boundaries. They could have trusted their system, and if they had not given those penalty opportunities, they would have ran away with the game and put themselves in better positions. But, time and time again, that desperation, that want to push the envelope, caught us off guard, and 14 penalties at Test match level with a kicker like that is always going to put you in a position. And look, Argentina weren't clean themselves. They gave us an opportunity to draw it, but then again, two guys that we've always seen, perfection from at the Crusaders and in the black jersey just had, a moment under that pressure where they didn't execute their role.
Yeah, just one thing before we move on that, Ross. I think one thing that the All Blacks probably got a little bit wrong was adapting to the ref. And look, I thought he probably was a little bit pedantic around the breakdown and how technical he was. But in saying that, there were 8 penalties in the first 20 minutes. So for the All Blacks, the ability to be able to adapt on the run is something they probably didn't get right. You probably would have thought that they would have previewed what that ref would have been like, come into halftime and want to rectify a few things around the penalty because they gave away so much. And it actually went in, you could probably think differently, but I think it just came into the hands with the Argentinians of being a lot more slow paced. Even though we dominated territory and position, it just didn't feel like there was rhythm in the game consistently for long periods of time. And then, like you said, the defence side as well. When you're operating at 96% as the Argentinians did, they were outstanding in that kind of facet of play. And then I think also as well, giving away 14 penalties and giving Boffelli, what was it, 6 penalties? 6 penalties with amount of points. It was pretty disappointing. But I think adapting to the ref was probably one thing I felt as well, that the All Blacks just weren't able to try and to change that and to change the momentum and get on the ref's positive side. And that
inability to adapt to the ref almost enhanced the frustration as well. You can see it on that body language. Talk about adapting to the ref. Don't want to make it about the Shield Challenge, but it was the same in that game. Both sides, flip-flopped in terms of their ability to deal with what ref decisions there were. And we always say it that the best team in the world, you don't need the exact same ref performance every week. You just need the consistent performance in that 80 minutes, and that's almost some players' points of difference and teams' points of difference is their ability to not let that distract them from what they're trying to achieve and just go, okay, that's how he's going to ref it. We need to adjust accordingly so that we can get the most out of it. And that's something that's probably been our strength for a long time, as in the All Blacks.
So when you think about the adaptation and handling the pressure, there were 667 caps in that starting 15. There's an average of 44 per player. And I understand that the front row is relatively inexperienced. But you look at the back line as well. If they don't have over 50 caps, they've been in that side for 3 to 5 years. Why can't this team, which includes a coach that's been within the setup that has managed to get over the line in those scenarios all the way back to 2012, why can't they do that right now?
Well, I don't have the answer. I wish I did, otherwise I'd sort it out. But what I do think is it's probably victim of our own success. Like a lot of these players, their whole All Black career, they've won 2 World Cups. They haven't been under this. I can only think back to '98. Was the last time, but probably not to this level of pressure because those losses were against Australia and South Africa. Whereas, and that's no disrespect to Argentina or Ireland, but they're first. That's quite a historical moment that you don't want to be on that side. And because they're these firsts, and now we've lost 3 at home, it's just that intensity of that pressure is something they wouldn't have experienced. These guys are World Cup champions, and they would not have felt this. It's a really hard thing, but if you haven't been through it, it's hard to know how to behave or what the solution is. And I think Jace Ryan probably hit it on the head. It's around that preparation and understanding that we've got to give ourselves every opportunity to win test matches. They're won and lost on such fine margins, and we've heard that time and time again, and those fine margins don't just apply on Saturday. It really does apply on that Monday to Friday.
Isn't that strange though, Bryn, that you've got such experienced coaches in New Zealand and Ireland who are setting up a preparation for the week that's inferior?
Well, I just think for whatever reason, I think post the 2019 World Cup, we just probably haven't seen the blossoming and probably the growth and the improvement that we probably see in World Cup cycles. I think usually after World Cups, we're a team, we're innovating, we're making things different, and the world are trying to catch up to what we're doing and trying to probably do the same things that we're doing. But it seems to be the other way. We've kind of we're asking the same questions from 2019, even that Lion series, to be able to still try and have solutions around to what that's looking like for us to succeed, which is almost 5-6 years ago. So, whereas you look at Ireland and France now, we're trying to catch them around how certain things around they're playing. So I think we've probably just lost that post 2019 World Cup, the growth and probably the innovation and the kind of direction we usually do. We're so accustomed to seeing with the All Blacks. We just probably haven't gone as fast. We haven't progressed as fast as these other countries have. And so now we're in that unfortunate position and probably not used to this position of chasing other teams. And not to say their types of style, but I think we're chasing teams in form of consistency right now. Look, we've won 2 test matches. What would you say, Ross? 6 out of the last 8 we've lost. So when do you talk about consistency when it comes to the All Blacks? But I just feel that's where we are. That's where we are as a rugby nation right now. Like I said at the first part of this, we're not world leading just at this stage. We're in that kind of top 6 mode now, where arguably you could say any of these teams could win a World Cup in 1 year's time. But when do you say that with the All Blacks? When do you ever ask around us being innovators or being at the top of the food chain? Where we probably just aren't there at the moment.
So, Bryn, would you say it's fair to say that they're rebuilding? That's what Ian Foster's calling it. Is this a rebuild or is this digging out of a hole?
I think it's a bit of both, Ross. For me personally, the word rebuilding, it's pretty tough with me because we've gone from the 2019 World Cup, and we've had cycles before. You look at 2015, we had Centurions that were greats of our game that were passing on, and we had to be able to bring new players on. But we were still winning Tri-Nations. We were still take away that British and Irish Lions, but we were still there or thereabouts in the top of the world and being able to still be really competitive and showing consistency of winning games. And so I don't like the word rebuilding, me personally. I think whether you're in an All Blacks jersey or not, whether you're in a rebuild mode, you still got to be able to win test matches. So, but like I said before at the start, the position that we're in, we're not in I don't think we're in a rebuild. We're just in a position where we're not consistent, and so we're not winning games. And so we've got to try and find that mojo of what that looks like, whether it be preparation, whether it be in pressure moments, understanding what that looks like and being able to win games in pressure moments, because we're in a lot of them at the moment. We're in a lot of pressure situations, and so we just need to be better around that. And so one thing that I've thought around is that preparation side. Jason Ryan bringing that up is a big thing for me, and so whether that's going to be a focal point moving forward around, are they going that bone deep when it goes to the preparation? We'll see how that goes. But yeah, the rebuilding word for me, it's really tough a year out from a Rugby World Cup.
I think we can use probably the Black Ferns as a little bit of an example of what a rebuild potentially looks like. And if you look at the amount of changes every week, every test, there's opportunity created for players to put their hand up to make the World Cup squad and set the tone of that sort of competitive edge within that group, and it's working, and they're still having the ability to win test matches. Whereas we have seen quite a consistent form of selection for a while now in those key. If I was a player and I heard the coach talk about rebuilding, you probably have to expect a few changes this week if that is the case, to give guys opportunities. The Hoskins, does Roger, does Stevie. I'm going to get ridiculed because they're all Blues players, but you know what I mean. Like, do guys get opportunity this week?
It's one of those things I think for New Zealand rugby fans is for so long, and we've spoken about how exciting it is to have a rugby championship where you don't know who's going to win any game, and that's what we've seen so far.
I hate to say it, like, I'm really excited for this weekend. Like, even the Aussie South African game, don't get me wrong, I was hurting just like everyone else on Saturday. Like, I was, in a bit of a daze, if anything. I was, just trying to get my head around, what had happened from such a good start. But I think you're right, like, you're going into this weekend just going, man, so much at stake, so much pressure from a viewing point of view. How good.
And for so long we've said the Six Nations is possibly the best competition because it is like that in the Six Nations. Each year it's a different winner. We don't understand what's going to happen week in, week out. The form fluctuates. But for New Zealanders, is that really what we've wished for? Because we've seen it happen now, and suddenly everyone's like, well, they're not winning anymore, and you can't have both. Can you? You can't have both.
No. And we've had this before as well, like maybe if we've maybe we've lost one test, you know, and people are like, oh, I don't really want a bit of that. But now, because it is consistent, you know, it's quite a stark reality. Like even for, you know, as fans, the three of us, like we're used to the All Blacks just winning. Like, you know, like look at our picks. There's not often this season or last season or that we're going, oh, you know, the All Blacks aren't winning this weekend.
Because statistically, it's stupid to pick against them.
Yeah,
now it's not.
And I'm sure the odds aren't that much more drastic in Argentina's favour this week. You know, so, but you're right, Bryn. Like with this sort of pressure and blowtorch on them even more. Like I thought we were in a pressure cooker before the South African test. You know, this is just heightened even more. You know, how much more disruption do you want in terms of selection leading into this test match? I mean, you've got to get that balance right because you don't want to set yourself up for further sort of failure.
Bryn, one of the most interesting parts about it, I suppose, is that up until now there's been this week in, week out. Is Ian Foster going to keep his job? And we know now that he's going to keep his job until the World Cup, at least that's what's been said. It makes week by week decision making look very flawed, doesn't it? You've got to look at a trend before you make a decision. You can't go, oh, they won this week, so we're backing out of this.
It's tough, man. You're not only the players, but you're the coaching, the management, and all that are all on the pressure cooker. And so for me personally, I don't think New Zealand Rugby are going to be able to make a decision around this, whether the results go north or south. I think, you know, they've committed around that, and that's the direction that they're going to go. So whether that's just internally, it's someone that makes a decision, and Fozzie goes, you know what, I don't want this anymore. But I can't imagine that would be the case, So this is what it's going to look like. We're probably going to have to, you know, bite a few, you know, lose a few. Unfortunately, you never ever want to say that with the All Blacks, but that's the kind of situation that when we've got to. It's so hard to say this because we're just not so used to it. Accepting losses and being able to learn from it. You'd never say that with the All Blacks, but I think sometimes, and probably you'd have to think in that environment now with the losses that have happened, they're trying to learn now from their losses, which, you know, we're probably not accustomed to with the All Blacks. And as fans as well, we're not used to the All Blacks losing. So, it's a tough situation to be in. But like you said, Ross, it's bringing a competitive competition and it's bringing everybody into the Rugby Championship. You know, what are we in now? 3 games. We've got a couple more left, and Argentina at the top of the table. You know, who would have said that at the start of the season, considering where they've come from and a new coach with Michael Cheika who's just come in. So it's been happy days for them.
Look, one of the jobs for me in the show is to reflect what the fans are saying and what they're talking about, and making sure you guys answer those questions. Now, one of those fans is my mum. Shout out to Sue Karl. She turned to me after the game on the weekend and she said, "Do we have to write off the World Cup now?" And I said, "I'm going to ask the boys that."
Well, I can only go on history, and if you look at '98, and you know, obviously, I think we made the semis in '99. Obviously didn't win the World Cup, but it is going to be a long stretch to go into that World Cup, you know, as favourites, especially when teams like Ireland and France are performing so well, and other teams, and it is just on your day. Like, we are getting to the point where you can be beaten on your day, but that doesn't necessarily mean we don't find form and have the ability to win 7 tests in a row. So I'd never write us off. I think it would be very, very dangerous for teams or oppositions to write the All Blacks off, because then, you know, when you've got nothing to lose and no expectation, that could prove, you know, really costly for the opposition. So I think we've still got to think we're going in with a shot, but there will need to be, you know, some big shifts over the next sort of 6 to 7 months for them to go in believing and confident in it.
Ian Foster talked about one of their issues is that in New Zealand Rugby's DNA is you run yourself out of trouble. So when they're under pressure, they're just trying to do it ball in hand. Bryn, is it their kicking game that needs to improve to fix this thing up?
Not necessarily. I think it's there. Like you look at the kicking structure that we did against the South Africans. I thought it was a great way of how we can probably implement a kicking game, and that's probably what we want to do moving forward. We've got the ability to be able to contest balls off 9. You've got contest balls off 10. Jip talks about that a lot. That's a great way to be able to build pressure, and it's a great form of an attacking kick, being able to get that right. And then you've got the middle of the field. I think the Argentinians and even the Australians on the weekend really kicked really well in that kind of field, and being able to give the teams coming out of that 22 area, whether they want to play with it. If they want to play with it, they can chance their arm, where we can try and get penalties from there. We can build pressure in their half, or we can counter attack off second or third kick from that kind of kick battle. And so I think the DNA is there, and I think it was just more so what we got wrong on the weekend. Like I said, it was the being able to adapt to the referee. We just got that wrong defensively, and sometimes with the clean out as well. He was really pedantic and very technical around side cleans and the entry that you did at the ruck. So I don't really think our kicking game was the problem on the weekend, and I think we've shown enough in that South African game, the second one, that we do have the ability to be able to kick and use that as a weapon. But at this stage, it's some areas that we're getting right. We get the kick strategy right against the South Africans, and we get the breakdown right. But then some weeks we don't get the breakdown right, whether it be coming in from a side and not being able to adapt to the ref, or defensively we're giving away silly penalties. 14 penalties in Test matches, and giving Buffelli 6 or 7 penalties, and building that scoreboard pressure is something completely different. It doesn't really have to do with our kicking strategy. So yeah, that's what I reckon.
I do think so we had 65% possession and 65% territory, so we played a lot of the game in our half. So when you're looking at your kicking game there, we're not having to play a territory-based kicking game that we probably saw more in Ellis Park. But what I would say is we don't want to overplay in between those two 40s. And if we're not making headway, sometimes you can get a lot of energy, as we saw from Argentina, off defence. It gives you, you can just feed off it, and it's quite empowering. So maybe if we go 3 or 4 rucks and we're not making headway in those, a contestable kick off 10, as long as it can land outside the 22. If it goes in the 22, you're just giving the ball back and it's too easy. And if that's the case, if you're close to the 22 and you're still not going anywhere, that's when you put it across the ground, and you can put some pressure on and look to counter ruck and turn the ball over there, and put kick pressure on and maybe get a line out close to the line. And we saw that the driving maul, when done well, we can score tries off it. So potentially, but I suppose fans have got to understand that when they're doing those kicks, we're not always going to get a positive gain out of it. And sometimes when we say, that put that kick through, that's actually it's a chess game. So you're making people make decisions that you may be able to take advantage later in the game. And so often I hear the next day is, why are we kicking the ball away? And it's like, well, we're trying to manipulate the defence to be able to have the ability to take advantage of it. And it is each piece moving on the board is putting you in a position to do what you actually want to do at a later date. So I think 15 kicks is pretty low, Bryn, kicks in play.
Yes.
But I think it's, because I've thought about it, I saw that number and I thought, man, that's quite low. But then when I watch the game again, it's like, we're not in a position to put a kick in because we're down their end. We're in their 22. We just weren't as effective as we would like around that breakdown stuff and getting, that punch that we saw previously against the Springboks to create that time and space on the edge. Saw it in the first 30, don't get me wrong, but that sort of last 50, when we're in that position, we were going back one way, going back the other, and got back into that habit of probably just shoveling stuff on to the next player.
The loose forwards, again, just like the first time they beat New Zealand, Matera, Kramer, wow.
Yeah, huge. Kramer, last time I think they won, he's tackled 28 times or whatever, and we highlighted that. He did it again on the weekend, and I think his best tackle came late in the game when he got off the line. Adi Savi is our best player, and he gets off the line and just goes low around the legs and forces him. He can't get those legs pumping, can't get the gain line carries that we're so used to, and that was a massive play. And it almost from there, their defence, they just wanted to defend. They didn't want the ball. They were like, I just want to keep coming at you, and I want to keep getting that energy that I feel out of stopping you doing what you want to do. And it was. And once they started to believe, it was just they just swarmed, didn't they? It was just absolutely brutal, and it was led those two men in particular. And I thought Lavanini was really, really strong as well around that area. And we speak about discipline in the past where they've got it wrong and they've almost taken their emotion too far one way that they've lost their cool. Man, they just had the balance so right, so perfect. No, they didn't even focus on the ref, or any time they were penalised, they'd acknowledge it. I think you even saw Pablo got done potentially, he got the ball, but Lavanini hadn't rolled away early in the game, and you could see him go, mate, and they didn't talk for each other, but then the cameras came back to them and they were talking calmly, and you could see they were solution focused. And I thought then, I was like, man, this is a different team. They still lost, their cool a little bit at the time of the penalty, but they composed themselves, and as the penalty has been taken, they got that clarity between each other, and you could see they both left it like going, oh, we know what each other wanted out of that.
One of the things that was said, Bryn, was by Michael Checker about Pablo Matera, and I hate to bring Scott Robertson up because we can't have a show without him, but he said that Scott Robertson and the Crusaders are to credit for the development in Pablo Matera's game over the last year. He saw a different player this time around to what he saw in previous years. Did you see that with Pablo as the season went on?
Oh, definitely. Just at his time with the Crusaders, I think to start with, obviously the English barrier, the understanding of different form of footy and style of rugby and play New Zealand teams, it took him a while to probably understand. And then more so just our schedule of what our week looks like, preparation-wise, meetings, and all that kind of information that was thrown at him. It probably took him a while, but look, once we got to that back end of the year and he understood that and he understood the structures and the schedule, he just got so much better. And I think it was from the conversations that I had with him, it was around his ability that he learned things every single day, whether that be from coaches, players, senior leaders, his willingness to always be like coming into Rugby Park and being like, man, yep, I didn't think of that at all, but I've had that conversation with a Sam Wildlock or Scott Barrett or Jason Ryan came in a meeting or came into a leadership meeting at times with us and been able to learn how a week structure is, or the mindset of how we drive that as a group, both management and leaders as well, and what that's looked like. So he just would have had so much information and so much stuff that he would have thought that he could take back to Argentina. But I think for him, we talked about it a bit around, you can't change everything when you go back. It's more so taking the big rocks of what he think would be really good. He could take back to the Argentinian team and being able to do that. And it was funny enough, being able to do it in Christchurch as well. I can imagine how happy he would have felt. And I guess he would have been massive around their mindset, around their week, around what it would have been like to play in Christchurch and what the meaning and the understanding of what it is to win in Christchurch. And look, I know he didn't win against the Jaguares, but understanding what the likes of Sam Whitelock will be talking about in a line-out meeting, or Scott Barrett will be thinking around this kick exit and what he'll be doing, or what Richie Mo'unga will be thinking around the strategy around these things, and being able to give those to the key players in that group and the coaches as well. So we saw that as well. He was able to influence in the game a lot, and talking to him after the game, he said it was a special one, and one that he'll definitely remember for the rest of his life for sure.
I think that was key. We sort of touched on it towards the end of last week's show, and we sort of, it was like the penny dropped for us three. It was like, man, he's actually learned how the team that is based in that city wins their footy, and how powerful that was. And we all said that, that's a big win for them, and I agree. I think it was a lot more of a, and Checker coming out and acknowledging it, not just him as an individual, but the way that the week was and how he was a big catalyst in them, being really clear on what they wanted to achieve. Let's not forget they had 30% of ball. They didn't want the ball. So often or not, we see the Crusaders win. They make 200 tackles as well, but they win. And it's that dewy, it's that cold night. It's just a style of play that works, especially down there, and that was a big factor.
The tackling was immense, 96%.
But the tackle height as well. It's like, and sometimes coaches, when look at the All Blacks, they come under the pump. We do have to acknowledge. I don't think any of us really thought David Kidwell would have this much of an effect straight away. There'd be some teething issues, but as we've said before, the All Blacks played them, it's like they've got a really clear picture in their head of what they need to do around their tackle and breakdown decisions, and it looks simple, but there's no head collisions, there's no double team shoulders being, they are just so focused on going low and then just pressuring that breakdown if it's available. But as soon as it's not available, they've lost it. You watch them bail out of it and fill that line so that they can come again. And don't get me wrong, they were broken. Like the All Blacks still made nearly 500 running metres, but when they were broken, they were still able to get back and stop it, except for obviously Caleb Clark's try. So it's he's done a hell of a job there around their decision making and their ability to defend time and time again. They almost want to defend, it looks like.
Yeah. Do you reckon it's a hybrid job? Because I don't know, like if David Kidwell is actually, he actually knows rugby, around like the norm, because obviously coming from a league background, if he actually understands around like the kind of the understanding of rugby in general, do you reckon it's a bit of a hybrid around like Cheika and Kidwell at the same time?
Potentially, especially because Cheika's spent a lot of time in league as well. Like he has done a lot of sort of, what do they call it, PD as coaches in and around. I think he's done it with the Roosters and maybe the Bulldogs, or I can't remember. But yeah, I definitely think he has got to have had a part to play around the breakdown decision making, Cheika, because the intricacies of it they'd be foreign to Kidwell. But I think it's almost like he's just stripped back the defensive system to just focusing on the tackle. And I use that Crema one on Ari Savia again because, we've seen Crema always stay high and look to just hold people up and monster them. And he was just, his whole body height was just down, and he just wrapped around those ankles, which, forced us to throw the ball back and, sort of just, we weren't in structure, we're out of system and, going backwards, and the rest of them are just swarming on us. It's pretty impressive how quick it's happened, and obviously the simplicity of it just works. Like I'll use Northland as an example. Their defence in this NPC is their point of difference. Like they can just defend phase after phase after phase. And speaking to a couple of players after the game on the weekend, it's like nothing that drastic has changed. It's just like a mindset shift of just they love doing it, and the more they do it, the more they feed off it. And so often not we're seeing in our game, the team that actually defends the most normally wins.
If Kramer's got a big engine, what do we call it, a ute? American muscle?
A ram.
A ram, yeah. Marika Korombeti's got a Ferrari.
Oh, mate.
He's that guy.
He's a truck. He's a Kenworth.
Where on earth he came from to make that tackle on Mapimpi?
How good was that high angle?
Unbelievable.
Like the pace he showed in overtaking Nick White, and man, it was impressive. Yeah, and that's just effort. That is just straight out effort. That'd be right up Dave Rennie's alley, that sort of behaviour. And he's been doing it for so long. Like he is one of the world's best players. But so often, wingers are judged on attack, but some of the efforts he's been putting in on defence is just immense. And that's such a big momentum swing. It's a knock on, they get the ball back, you build from that. South Africans are frustrated by it. And I think it wasn't long after that Faf de Klerk got yellow carded. Trying to make a big play.
Let's talk about that. Nick White, he's got the moustache. He kind of looks like...
I'll let the halfback talk about this.
He kind of looks like a cartoon character. He doesn't have the goatee of Bryn Hall right now. But Bryn, what was he doing, and why was he doing it? Faf de Klerk, that is.
Yeah, I think he probably just got it. He just got it wrong. I think he wanted to put pressure on it. There was like the 37th or 38th minute just before half time, and I think at that stage as well, the South Africans had actually had a lot of ball. I think it was at the left-hand side of the scrum for like 5 minutes, been able to try and get over the line, and then there's a big penalty, and then that scrum ended up happening. But he would have got penalised actually for it if you used your hand. You probably actually can't use your hand. You can use your foot to be able to get the ball out. But yeah, I think.
Do you think he was trying to smack the arm? You know how we've seen in the NPC, like guys are trying to get to that halfback and smack the arm?
Yeah, I think he was, but I think you do run a risk of still getting penalised for that. I think if you use your foot, that's the best way to do it, because you actually you don't get penalised for it. It's the best way to do it. So, whether Faf actually was, even if he did get his hand, it's a real 50-50, depending on what the ref was and how they officiated. It could be really different. And so, yeah, for your viewers, if you're a 9 and want to do that, you probably want to use your feet, because Nick White should get an Oscar for the amount that he put on. But it comes back to gamesmanship and being able to, at that moment, Faf de Klerk was off for 10 minutes through with that, being able to play a bit of football and soccer that he was doing with faking it. But Yeah.
He did get slapped in the face, and you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to piss off the South African people in the comments section.
Yeah, but he was playing on, and then it's like it came to him after about 3 steps, and then he just fell over. I do have to make a public apology to Fraser McWright. I said that Samu should start at 7 because it's a bigger body, but man, he was an absolute powerhouse and physical, dominant. So yeah, I'll eat my hat on that one. My apologies.
Yeah, I will as well. I will as well, Jip. And
I did think Samu was good when he came on, though.
Yeah, but I think McBride, he earned his starting spot through that performance
Certainly
against the
did.
South Africans. But I think one thing, if the Australians are going to be pretty gutted around, I think if they could have got that bonus point, Jip, and I think bonus points in this competition is going to be really important. You know, it was 74 minutes, and what have I got down here? It was 25-3 with 5 to play, and they had a bonus point, and then they just let them in. I think if they were able to hold out, David Rennie would have, if they could have got that bonus point, I think it would have been a perfect test match for them because.
But I think
they just let them back, even though it was 25-17. I thought it was just a lot more closer, and probably one that got away, knowing how important one bonus point may be to win this competition.
Yeah, but you know what it's like when a team's chasing, and the South Africans were chasing. They were chancing their arm with a lot of offloads and a lot of plays, and some of them stuck. You know, in the end, the tackle stats of South Africa, Australia is at 80%, and also 16 penalties. So through that chancing their arm, it forced Australia into positions that they didn't want to be in, and they couldn't, live with. And I think they did well, to be honest, in that first half to hold the South Africans out as long as they did. Like it could have easily been 10-all, maybe even the Springboks going in ahead with some of the work they'd done, on attack, and they just didn't finish those opportunities. Did South Africa?
Let's talk about the South Africans more then. I'm sure that Jacques Nienaber is getting plenty of grief over in South Africa because if you look at the Welsh series, that wasn't a strong series for them. They got through it, but they had their problems. They looked really strong against the All Blacks in the first test, and then now they've had 2 pretty disappointing results in a row. Bryn, how are they tracking?
Well, I just think it seems to be at this part of the world that consistency is just one thing that these teams aren't getting at the moment. And so, South Africa's is in that position as well. We talked around a couple of weeks ago when they beat the All Blacks, thinking that, they're thereabouts, and they're gonna slowly improve. And so, they do struggle in South Africa. We talked about that last week, and for whatever reason, whenever they go across the ditch, they struggle there. But I guess for them, they were just their mistakes in their handling areas were just awful on the weekend. Look, they had 10 in the first half and weren't able to build pressure. I look at that first 10 minutes, probably Australia dominated that, and then with the next 30 minutes, the South Africans were predominantly dominating that game, and they weren't able to build scoreboard pressure, which they do with Andre Pollard. He missed a couple of kicks early on to build that scoreboard pressure, and I think just their mistakes. They weren't able to build pressure, and they weren't able to score points. I think they went over one. They got held up, and then they got a try that was held up, and then for about 5 or 6 minutes they were down on that left hand side and weren't able to execute and score points when they were in that position to try and score in that part of the field. So I think consistency and execution of their ball handling skills wasn't up to par, and then they didn't get the opportunities to be able to go to their line out more due to that because they weren't able to get there as many times.
I think also they are a team that also thrives off defence. Like they've got that rush defence, and Australia got that quick ball. They got a few tips away that got in behind, and so often when the Springboks have time to set and get off the line, there is no tip space because they shut it all off and they say, if you can get to the edge, you get there, but we back ourselves to cover that, and we're going to keep coming. Even Cotton Betty's try, Pollard came, but he stopped. So what we saw against when they beat the All Blacks is they just kept coming. It was just unrelenting, but for some reason, because of the speed of the ball and the way that the Aussies were getting in behind the gain line, Pollard stopping for me, I was like, man, they're just not there on their defence. They're not, and that's where they get so much of their mojo from, like putting teams under pressure, putting their skill set under pressure and getting those turnovers, which allows them to play that territory-based game. But it put them in a position where, we sort of spoke about it with Skulkers, man, they were actually great attackers. Like, man, some of their interplay when they were chancing their arm and trying to chase the game was exceptional. Like, they got in behind the defence, a number of times. It's just been able to get that balance right to be able to go back to what they know, especially into that 22, to build phases and use their body side. But it looked pretty hot, and because the Aussies were getting in behind, those big boys were having to do a hell of a lot of work underneath the big yellow, which wouldn't have been easy either.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. They also probably fell into that trap as well. They weren't able to implement their kicking game, which is their DNA, because they were chasing the game. They were down, and so they had to be able to transfer a little bit more. And that probably led in maybe into the point of why they were getting a few, kind of unforced areas because they were playing so much. But I think I agree with you, Jip. When they play, man, they're exciting. They're exciting to play. They're exciting to watch. So, and even I question if they were like in that position where it's a tight test match, would they actually play like that kind of way? I think they'll revert back to their kind of DNA of their kicking and being able to try suffocate guys. And then, like you said, Joe, defensive pressure from that to be set and then being able to get up. So I feel like when they have to chase games and they're behind, they have to fall back into that play of being able to play more. But, for us as Kiwis, we love seeing that. We're probably in South Africa. They want to be like, man, we weren't able to implement them and strangle them through our kicking game and our line speed pressure.
They didn't give their wingers the opportunity that we saw in that first test win against the All Blacks. Their kicks were too long. It made it easy for players like Hodge and Tom Wright to just counter-attack and come back. They needed to really almost button off about 10 metres of all those kicks to put them in the race.
The Wallabies much improved. The Wallaroos were much improved too. After copping a big one last week against the Black Ferns, 14-22. I'm not sure people thought it would be that close, Chipper.
No, well, we didn't. We thought it would tighten, but I didn't think it would tighten that much. And the two areas that they worked on massively was their pressure at the breakdown. So they, we spoke about Kendra Coxey's running and, people running holes, and it was fluent and it was fast, and, it just gave that defence no time. But they were just into that breakdown and they were committed to it. And also two in the tackle. They put two in a tackle a lot of the time, and if they couldn't get two, there was one coming pretty quick to Hunt and Jackal. And that was the biggest shift for me. And also I do think, we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but a lot of changes, a lot of opportunity. Sometimes it's just those, let's not, there was a couple of tries through a last pass drop that could have, extended that score out that we're so used to, seeing the Black Ferns finish off. And I suppose the Wallaroos had one early as well. But yeah, look, it was a great test match, great to watch. And just to see that shift in physicality and intent is probably a good primer for the World Cup, because that's the physicality and defensive pressure we will see out of England and France as well that are coming over here. So it's not all bad, and they still had the ability to fight and grind their way out of it and win the game. And I think they still had that ability to crank the ruck speed, but they were smart not to go in and around the fringes. They picked him behind, for Nawu's try. They just picked him behind and they got to where they wanted to go, just in a different way this week.
Did you like it, Bryn?
Yeah, I think, for the competitiveness, I think for Australia, for the Wallaroos, you've got to be really, really, really happy with how you went. The turnaround in Christchurch and being dominated in probably all players and all facets of play. A great turnaround for them. And I think you're right, Jip, the breakdown area, they were just a lot better around their tackle choice selection and the dominance and actually being able to jackal the ball and slow it down. And so, sometimes I think you're right, Jip, as well. Sometimes when you do have a lot of changes, the cohesion, the kind of flow and the rhythm that you have, you sometimes, girls are given their first opportunities for a long time and want to probably stake their claim for that World Cup squad. And so sometimes you can, try a little bit too much and not get things right. And so, but I actually probably thought on the attacking side of the breakdown, we weren't as good as we were last week, the last game. Wade Smith actually talked about it. He thought the inside cleater wasn't reading the cues and anticipating really, really well. And so that led into the Wallaroos being able to get breakdown turnovers, and we weren't able to get that quick ball that we were seeing with Kendra Coxey and being able to get in the previous test match. So it seems to be the case at World Rugby on both sides, whether it be the male or the female game. It's the breakdown and being able to be efficient there. And so that's one area that the Black Ferns, they've probably done really, really well the last 2-3 test matches, but just shows it's going to be a good primer for them, knowing the likes of England and the likes of France, of how kind of brutal they are at the breakdown. If you don't get that anticipation and the kind of the roles with your reading cues, you're going to get breakdown turnovers. And that's probably one thing with the Black Ferns, with how they want to play. They want to play up tempo. They want to move the big teams around, like the likes of England and France moving forward. They've got one more test match against Japan, I believe, Jip. So it'll be one last opportunity in the Farah Palmer Cup coming up to be able to get some meaningful rugby and try to work on those areas that they didn't get right in Adelaide.
Yeah, and I think you speak about the attacking breakdown. I think, when you score 55 points, it was so much fun and it just happened on the back of the hard work, and maybe this week they were looking for the offload before the clean, and just that split second of that decision just, didn't allow them to I suppose, go through with the dominance they had the week before.
Do you feel like any of the changes that were made, there were 4 in the pack, a number in the back line, will influence the top team and what they might be? Do you think some of those players we saw from Luca Connor, Amy Rule, Maya Roos, people who could make their way into the pack permanently?
Yeah, I thought Bruce was really good, and she's almost caught between a Lucy and a Lock, isn't she? She had a good game. Obviously, Luca Connor was good. I don't think it's the individuals. I think it was more potentially some of the mindset, but also just acknowledging the Wallaroos. They fronted up way more around that breakdown, and they made it a lot more challenging for the Black Ferns. But the fight, they were put under pressure in the fight to get out, and they got to quite a comfortable. I know it tightened up obviously with that sort of last try in the last 5 minutes, but they had to grit their way out of that, and they did it. So that's not a bad thing to go through and come out the other side with a victory.
V Wellington, Waikato v Auckland. Who do you have?
Auckland did well to come back over the top of Wellington. They were behind, and Wellington have been this dark horse. They seem to have hit form. I don't think they'll beat Canterbury, but I don't think it'll be as easy as they think. Like they've still got some life left in the Wellington Pride, and I think Waikato will be too good for Auckland. I don't know. Their form's just been a little bit up and down and too inconsistent, and Waikato will get a few Black Ferns back as well as Auckland will too. But yeah, Waikato at home.
It's turning into a hell of a rivalry between those two teams, Bryn.
Yeah, it is. And I think with the ability to be able to bring the Black Fern girls back, I think it's definitely going to help them. And I think Waikato, and for me personally, is probably going to be Canterbury are going to be, they've been the form team and obviously haven't lost a game, and they'll get the Black Fern girls back, I think, if that's the case. But for me, it's probably looking like another Canterbury Waikato final, which was enthralling last week. But that's not to say, Auckland have they've always been there or thereabouts, and so you can't doubt them. But they've been pretty inconsistent this year. So for me, it looks like it's going to be a 2-horse race with Waikato and Canterbury.
Okay, let's jump into our international predictions. Talked a lot about the ABs versus Argentina. Are they going to turn it around?
I believe so. Yes.
But you've got to think the All Blacks are going to...
How can you laugh at me like that and then piggybacks on the back of it?
Sorry, mate. I'm just thinking, I can't believe we're even thinking about this conversation. But the All Blacks, you'd have to think we'll get it right. You'd have to think so.
We've said that before.
So All Blacks.
It was 2-0 in South Africa,
We've
said
eight times out of the last 6 Test matches. So
we might have to hang our rifle up, Bryn, if we get it wrong.
We picked South Africa as well, and then the All Blacks won. So we're no good at the moment picking.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult. But I think we can all forgive you either way next week, because it's just hard to know what's going to turn up from any of these teams in this competition. Yeah,
and let's make no bones, like we still see the power in the All Black jersey, and there's probably a little bit of biasm there, and like it would be they'd have to be. Yeah, I just still think they've got enough there, and the biggest reason is they're in control of the mistakes. It's not the other way around, that they didn't have control.
It's a big weekend, because if they lose this weekend, it's going to be very tough for them to come back and win the rugby championship.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be possible.
So they've got to do that. And with that saying, South Africa's in a very similar position. So can they get up against the Wallabies?
Bryn?
I think buoyed by the performance they had on the weekend, I actually think Australia will get the job done. It'll be a lot closer. I don't think, even though the scoreline shows that it was close, but you'd probably think for 74 minutes, they were up 25-3. So I just think the Australians will just win this one. But in saying, there's been no consistency this year in this championship, so South Africa will probably win by 30. But I'll pick the Australians, which will be a hell of a bleeders load coming up if the Kiwis, if the All Blacks can get the win this week.
I think, South Africa haven't won since 2013, so it's all against them really. But I just think there's a couple of areas if they can tweak, like if they can get those contestable kicks right and put their wingers back in the challenge, as we've seen, and sort of have the ability to slow the ruck ball down to get their defence humming. They put themselves right back in the mixer, and it's a different feeling for Lolosio and co, how they get out of that one. So I just think there'll be enough of an adjustment to think the Springboks may just squeak home this weekend.
And so with that said, we're halfway through the Rugby Championship. Who is your pick to win the Rugby Championship?
Say it, Chip.
I still have to back the All Blacks.
Oh, no.
I just don't see us losing the Bledisloe, mate. Yep, and I bring the heat. I just do.
You know what, Chip?
You're going to say the same, mate. Yeah.
I'm going to jump to say the exact same thing.
Well, who do you think, Ross? You're the voice of the people.
I think Australia's going to win the Rugby Championship. Because if they take one test apiece against the All Blacks and they win this weekend against South Africa, they've won the Rugby Championship. So I think the odds surely must be in their favour.
Well,
it is, Ross. It is. But yeah.
So you're picking the All Blacks this weekend then?
I'm picking.
Because RG are first.
Look,
voice of the people.
Yeah, the voice of the people. Look, I do think that the All Blacks will bounce back this weekend. I do. In saying that, anything could happen. So who knows?
Yeah.
But you know.
You're probably right. Wallabies, but RG in the box seat as well, because there's definitely an All Blacks team that's not playing with confidence. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just blind faith, mate.
Yeah.
But I've got it.
Yeah. Hope, blind faith. It's there.
The conviction's not there like it was, say, when I was like 2-0 in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I'm not going to lie to the people, but there is a lot of blind faith in that call.
The more that I think about it, the more I'm 50-50 on this. Like, I think I might even be a fence sitter for this weekend.
No.
For the All Blacks, baby.
The people aren't fence sitting out there, mate.
No, the people are the opposite.
Yeah. They're picking RG, I think.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we had the same discussion before the Ellis Park test.
Yeah.
They are in control of the outcome. So if they make the necessary adjustments, they would have won that test. That's the nuts and bolts of it.
As long as they're consistent in that way, not consistent in the way that they've been consistently losing, everyone will be happy. Thank you very much, Chipper. Thank you very much. But I feel like I've been cruel in this episode. Have I been cruel in this episode?
You've been good, mate. You've been good.
Okay.
Well, if we didn't answer the true questions, we know that we'd be copping a fair amount of heat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys, and thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod.